Midland egress. Formally studying the mind's eye, they sit feeling very alive at humble desks to compose mesmeric songs with damaged hearts. They hallucinate for transformative texts, which they improve by dreaming up eternal readers. The horizon empties of classic themes, and foreign lights shine on everything. So I'm going to be reading mostly from a novella in verse, which is called Agonistes, about another apocalyptic book I'm writing. To speak to the process of it, I knew I wanted to write a novel, but I don't write novels, so I wanted to write a long poem. I knew I wanted to write a long poem, but I've never written any long poem like this, so I sort of looked to Milton, and then a lot of novels that I really love that have great anti-heroes. And so the book is sort of, I guess, it's about an anti-hero who wants to destroy the world. And I guess that's really all you need to know. And it's the end point of the narration is the last day of the Mayan calendar, which is something the narrator is obsessed with. So December 21st, 2012. And speaking to process, I was trying to figure out how to start writing this poem. And I was at a bookstore, and I think I was buying a new edition of, or a new book, Milton, like collected or something. And I heard someone say, my older brother is an astronaut, and in the bookstore, where I'm from, this was in Berkeley, where I live. In Berkeley, I assume that's pretty rare, that someone would say that. But where I'm from the Gulf Coast of Texas, and I'm actually from right next to Mission Control. So I knew people whose parents and perhaps older brothers were astronauts. But so it just was I was like, oh, okay, that's how I'm gonna start the poem. So yeah. Days of shaking out rugs. I should be much for open war, O peers. My eldest brother is an astronaut. The truth is, I have no older brother. I was born an orphan and do become more of an orphan as I grow older. All my years I've spent in this town alone, but for those who made me eat my carrots. In fact, I'm an astronaut myself. I'm the world's only real astronaut. I'll recede into space before your eyes. If you have ever returned from a trip abroad and found your country completely changed, then you know how I've always felt. I once thought it a simple problem of geography, that I was born 10 hours late, that the globe had spun beneath my soul too much, and when I did at last descend, I animated an American instead of a nascent whale or some babe destined for wealth and greatness in Japan. Later, once I had learned that God is dead, but there is a striving and adaptive spirit in all forms of life, I shifted the blame to history, the ugliest story I've ever heard, and one whose gore I can never seem to turn away from. I was born too late or too early, or I shouldn't have ever been born at all. Then I ended up on a sofa and learned about Freud and dreams I didn't have. Although most of it seemed phony, the source of my constant discomfort became clear. The world is made by men and women, made in fits and starts when they are without love. That was and is where I rest my case. Love itself is good for nothing but killing time and the desire to make the future into a circumstance to be survived. What remains if thou lovest nothing well? If you said emptiness, then you are wrong. Emptiness itself means well when well wrought, but love not well wrought is its opposite, which, mind you, is not hate, it is revenge. And so when I looked to the stars and saw only the darkness between them, I knew that our world's time in the heavens should end. I'm building a machine that will bring a comet into Congress with the Earth, to return the ether to its peaceful anonymity without a subject. From my bedroom I'll hear morality cry out as its contradictions collapse upon mankind. We who used it against one another in our arguments and wars. The belief that death is some cave or hole has led us to use life as a weapon. Only by destroying death's ladder's rungs can we bring eternity back to life. We are none of us innocent. That word itself is evil wherever applied. No, evil is not a strong enough word, for evil has an end. But innocence is a daisy chain of hurting people. When you hear someone laughing, is your first impulse not to think they're laughing at you? Defending the indefensible is life. Everyone knows how cruel children are. Still, it is not cruelty that I loathe. I do not loathe. I only love, as well as any other imperfect lover. But love itself is breaking. As a boy's voice breaks under maturity's burdens, a girl captures his imagination with her smile. His bicycle seems too small, and his baseball cards turn into paper. Once upended, the world is never free. Still, my love is strong for all waves and groups of people, and for them I raise a glass and toast a way to end our suffering, a way to end it all without murder. If your refrigerator crushed you, would you call it a killer with your last breath? No. You would cry and think of sandwiches. Such is my plan to bring relief to us. Heaven will fall upon the earth, and we will be subsumed into our universe. I've read hundreds of religious texts, 7,000 books of philosophy, and 1,000,000 pamphlets of poetry. None of them contains an ounce of wisdom. They are merely tired lists of arguments, digressions on beginnings and endings, rules for abattoir and birthday parties. The question that we really want answered is what will happen to our precious souls? Such a question can only be answered with a sincere apology, and now only disguised violence is sincere. I see this end in our future, and now be the prophet and the fulfiller one. So each section is in 10-line syllables. There are 10 syllables. Yeah, 10 lines of 10 syllables in each line. And there are 10 sections. So there are 100 lines in each section. I guess, times 10 times 2. So I don't know. But anyways, that's important because I'm going to read 2 unfinished sections. And they're not done. So that you'll kind of get a sense of how much is left in each section before I move to the next one. Days of the Bat. And this is skipping ahead a couple of months in the narrator's life. To fuck a god out of the sky, one must dream of roses blooming in the springtime, then break a vase upon which is painted a scene of waning romanitas and a woman waiting for her past to fade. Because we think ourselves too far along, there are things that can no longer be made. Victorian carriages, Fabergé, prophylactic charms. Before their voices devolved into streams of echolalia and suffering, a few rich snobs turned poor saints said that if a man is who he would have others be, then he may have some power over them. Thus speaks religion to philosophy, philosophy to government and gods to preachers, preachers to fathers, fathers to sons and sons to mothers, virgins all, who bear witness and mourn their shameless boys. My own tears mimic archaeology, as does my desire to possess the past, as if things were only their adornments, that vase without the warm blood that filled it, vast cathedrals empty in the same way, and even philosophy's strange questions poured out of the earnest skulls that hold them. Living for what's gone as I do, my life is a mnemonic pilgrimage to a dismantled desert monument. Moving toward an image, I lose faith in what that image might return to me. So I turn away from what I witness, for a sailor may go blind from the sea. The best guides descend into some darkness before they find a means to treat the light and follow past a role in comedy or tragedy, away to more obscure and breathtaking views than the smug grandeur that the names of proclaimed things would allow. With a heart the color of bitter wine, yet still undeformed by grief of knowledge, I spent many years waiting patiently for bridges to be built from promises, not knowing that words themselves are too false, and mankind's tale is told in children's dreams, as well as the falling nightmares that haunt everyone regardless of crowd or age. Traumas of the grave are the cradles too, our lives bookended by those empty thrones. The blue sky is supported by mountains. Heaven is held up by columns of sin. Whatever it was that caused us to begin left us alone as fire abandons smoke. So then we're skipping ahead, and the narrator's sort of worldview has changed because he's just met this person and then gone on a date. So yeah, I mean, it was a good date. Days of the new sun. I would critique the world and laud it too, but I am lost in upheavals of thought, and now would rather speak of operas than hell, and so I think I am in love. Hot, tired, and nervous, I waited for her on the bench where we agreed we would meet. At once in joy and fear my head rebounds to hear her voice in this room where I write. It can only be love that so transforms emptiness into an echo chamber. She was running about 10 minutes late, and I had forgotten the words of songs, so I hummed while I waited for her there between the sea and the aquarium. Although nervous, I waited patiently, where many others before me waited in reverie for first dates or safe love. Nearly a month has passed, but I clearly recall the shapes of clouds and animal-shaped shadows bathing me in cool darkness. As time transcends those who would defy it, one shadow that passed over me was hers, and too in fantasy to see her approach, I started at hearing her cheerful voice. "How are you?" she asked. But who was I then? I was a new man that very instant, without past or future, outside of time, beyond language even, without a clue, without mysterious reputation, amnestic, naked, in a distant land. I'm sure my mouth was stupidly agape. I'm sure the first sounds I made were babble. Then I found myself in my voice as well. "Oh, hello, I'm fine, what a nice day," and I know I spoke too quickly. "How are you?" She answered, "Well," politely, with a smile. The rest of the day was a dream of dreams, and as it is said that in the end times nearly all believers' dreams will be true, I for once take refuge in the faithful. As when soldiers clothe themselves in nature to hide their resolution for a war, that morning I chose my favorite tea. Then, thinking it better to save the best for a more strategic date, I went back to the closet and chose a Hawaiian shirt. Sorry, it's ridiculous. A toucan on its heart-side pocket. I also perhaps wanted to evoke a sense of honeymoons past and future. For what other cause would such shirts be made? A light breeze caused the world to sway with us. I knew the meanings of all her movements, and when I started my favorite joke, a survivalist walks into a bar. She laughed without waiting for the punchline. Laughter of a good person's affection. I felt not so much like a man as like a sound in the hollow of a guitar, or a guitar with a song in its strings. She was just two great eyes looking at me. On that day I understood everything. I understood floral bouquets and rings and musical chairs and childhood sweethearts. I understood romantic comedies and going out for coffee and skiing down a slope toward a heart-shaped hot tub. I understood children and rock and roll. I understood king-sized beds and water with bubbles in it and Valentine's Day. My imagination was satisfied. We watched waves as we talked about ourselves. then ate some awful hot dogs on a pier, and saw the fish at the aquarium. She loves the jellyfish above all things. Finally, we rode a roller coaster, her shoulder pressed against mine as we screamed, and I could feel the carnival's cheap thrills transform into primitive metaphors that continue to squirm about in all my suppositions of society. Lovers are best understood by themselves. And now I'm going to read just 2 more little poems. Again, thank you all for coming, and it was really wonderful to drive all this way in the rain and have a full room of really seemingly cool people. All right, this is a very tiny poem called Death in the Tropics. The parrots will cry whatever you've whispered. And Thomas Jefferson's Cabbage. It's a photo by my dad. You can go to what's it called? His place, Monticello, and they still have cabbage that were, the great-grand cabbage of his cabbages or something. Kids of his cabbage. So, the sightseers know what they are seeing, for it is written on the signs. This little mountain plantation, surrounded by slave gardens and ghosts, is pretty as a picture. Using Benjamin Banneker's almanac, one could ascertain the best cure for a mild rash, or which night of 1792 would be most perfect for reading the works of Machiavelli by moonlight. All states, all powers that have held and hold rule over men. And this is my last one. It's called Romance. To be in a relationship could mean to be a whole world discreet, and that's the danger. For example, a person might point out that Friedrich Holderlin looks like George Washington in some paintings. It seems a reasonable enough remark, but because the other person cares for Holderlin so much more than Washington, or vice versa, it starts a fight. Likewise, the simple subject of food, or how someone talks about money during sex, the labyrinth of another's understanding can be so painful, it may carry with it the risk of myth and provoke the unsuccess of which it warrants. Thank you.